Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into the literal rules of life on Earth. We're going to map out the incredibly intricate system that keeps absolutely everything, including us, alive. And, well, we're also going to take a hard look at the modern variables that are threatening to tear the whole thing apart. By the end of our time together, you're going to have a crystal clear grasp of what biodiversity actually means. And trust me, you'll see exactly why the stakes for preserving it are so incredibly high. Let's get into it. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap. We'll start by defining the web of life. Then we'll measure nature's true scale. After that, we'll look at why biodiversity matters today, introduce the evil quartet of extinction, and finally, unpack the impacts of losing life.
Section 1. Defining the web of life, from genes to ecosystems.
So our core term here is biodiversity. It's a word coined by Walter G. Rosen, and it basically represents the complete, mind-boggling variety of life on Earth. And look, we're not just talking about animals in a zoo here. We are talking about everything. Plants, microorganisms, the totally unseen genetics running under the hood, and the massive ecosystems that they all build together. It is literally the whole shebang. Now, it's important to realize that biodiversity doesn't just happen on one level. It actually operates across three very distinct scales. If we zoom all the way into the microscopic level, we've got genetic diversity. That's the variation of genes inside a single species. Think about us humans, right? Our genetic variation is what allows us to adapt to totally different environments, like having more melanin if you live somewhere with intense blasting sunlight to protect your skin, or having less melanin in cloudier regions so you can actually absorb enough vitamin D. That is genetic diversity doing its job. Then, zooming out a bit, we hit species diversity. This is usually what pops into our heads when we hear the word, the sheer richness and abundance of all the different organisms living in an area. And then, zooming out even further to a bird's eye view, we get ecosystem diversity. That's the massive variety of habitats, the ecological processes, and those big biological communities spread all across the globe. To really wrap our heads around why this matters, let's compare two totally different environments. I want you to imagine a lush, thriving rainforest, and then compare that to a massive single-crop wheat field. Okay, so the rainforest, it is packed with this rich, even distribution of thousands of species. You've got deer, elephants, birds, snakes, not to mention thousands of different types of trees. And because of this extreme diversity, that ecosystem is rock solid. It's stable. If a random disease rolls through and wipes out one type of plant, the forest as a whole, it survives just fine. But then look at the wheat field. It's essentially just one single species, incredibly low diversity. If a specific pest or some new crop disease targets that exact type of wheat, bam, the entire ecosystem is wiped out. It's highly, highly vulnerable. So you see, species diversity and evenness are directly responsible for keeping an ecosystem stable and resilient. It's like an insurance policy for nature. Let's move on and see how this builds. Section 2, measuring nature's true scale, understanding alpha, beta, and gamma. Way back in 1972, a researcher named Whitaker came up with a brilliant way to measure all this biodiversity over different spatial scales, so we wouldn't just get bogged down in the math. Imagine a specific, localized habitat, let's say just one little patch of forest on the side of a mountain. That patch, that's your alpha diversity. Now, if you take that patch of forest and compare it to the river ecosystem right next to it, just to see how the species change as you literally step across the border between the two, that comparison is your beta diversity. And finally, if you zoom way out to look at the entire mountain range and tally up the total diversity of every single ecosystem combined, that grand total is your gamma diversity. So just remember, alpha is the local community, beta is the comparison, and gamma is the whole region. Fast forward to a landmark study by Mora and colleagues in 2011, which gave us some absolutely staggering estimates. When you compare ocean species to terrestrial species, something pretty wild emerges. Even though the oceans cover more than 70% of our planet's surface, they only contain an estimated 2.21 million species. But terrestrial habitats, land basically, boast a massive 6.54 million species. Terrestrial life just absolutely dominates the diversity chart. And when you add those together, it brings the grand total to around 8.75 million species living on Earth. 8.7 million. It's almost impossible to picture. It's an unfathomable scale of life. 8.7 million distinct, unique species, with every single one of them playing a vital role in keeping their own little corner of the ecosystem stable. But here is where we have to drop the anchor and face reality for a second. Compare that 8.7 million estimate with this number, 2.13 million. As of 2021, 2.13 million is the mere fraction of species that have actually been listed and categorized by the IUCN. Do the math on that. That means there are roughly 6.5 million species sharing this rock with us that we haven't even formally discovered yet. Think about how much knowledge, how many potential life-saving medicines, and how many vital ecosystem pieces are just waiting out there. And, honestly, terrifyingly, think about how much we stand to lose before we ever even know it existed.
Section 3. Why biodiversity matters today. The anchor of human survival.
The significance of all this biodiversity is incredibly multi-layered. It's not just nice to have. It all flows inward to sustain life itself, and outward to support our human well-being. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what I mean. Look at the pure utilitarian benefits. Healthy ecosystems provide global fisheries, which supply a massive 15% of all the animal protein consumed by humans worldwide. Over 70,000 species of plants are actively used in traditional and modern medicine today. And beyond that, we get these massive ecosystem services. Forests literally mitigating climate change, wetlands regulating biogeochemical cycles and stopping soil erosion, natural predators keeping crop pests in check. When you add in the aesthetic, the social, and even the moral value of nature, the takeaway is undeniable. Human survival is completely, 100% anchored to the stability of this complex wheel.
Section 4. The Evil Quartet of Extinction. Introducing the threat.
Now, what's really interesting about this framing is the language used by evolutionary biologist Jared Diamond. He didn't just call these things threats or risks. He named them the Evil Quartet. And honestly, that title perfectly captures the devastating synergy of the 4 primary drivers of extinction that are currently wiping out biodiversity all across the globe. So who exactly makes up this Evil Quartet? Well, number 1 is habitat loss and fragmentation. That means destroying a forest completely or even just chopping it up with roads so that genetic diversity gets isolated and slowly dies out. Number 2 is overexploitation. We've seen this drive entire species to total extinction time and time again. Think of the passenger pigeon or the Steller sea cow, just gone. Number 3 is alien species invasion. This is where introducing a foreign predator utterly decimates local species that have absolutely zero natural defenses against it. And number 4 is co-extinctions. Because the web of life is so interconnected, when a host species goes extinct, the species that relied on it vanish right along with it. It's a domino effect. And hey, if the quartet wasn't bad enough on its own, we also have to add the modern heavy hitters of climate change and pollution. For example, in India, studies have directly linked the severe decline in the house sparrow population to urban changes and even electromagnetic radiation from mobile phones. We are quite literally changing the physical and chemical nature of the world.
Section 5. The impacts of loss of life. A sobering reality.
So the crucial point here is that when you degrade biodiversity, human suffering directly increases. As habitats shrink and get fragmented, humans and wildlife are forced into much closer contact. And this leads to a massive spike in human-wildlife conflict. But far more dangerously, it causes an increase in zoonotic disease transmission. We're talking about diseases leaping from stressed-out animal populations right into our human cities. On top of that, as we lose species, our global food security becomes deeply threatened, and we permanently lose undiscovered medicinal resources. The ultimate result of all of this is a steep, dangerous drop in ecosystem stability. Remember that vulnerable wheat field we talked about earlier? Yeah, humanity is making its own life support system increasingly vulnerable to total collapse.
Which leaves us with this final, vital question to chew on. With 8.7 million species sharing this planet, as the evil quartet continues to pull threads out of this web, how much more can we actually remove before the entire ecosystem that sustains humanity just collapses? Understanding these rules and truly measuring the stakes is our first crucial step toward fixing it.